The U.S. Constitution's 13th Amendment reads, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States." Would reinstatement of a military draft violate the 13th Amendment?
Absolutely. Conscription is a clear, obvious violation of the 13th Amendment. The 13th gives no exceptions for government. Besides, the draft will never be required to fight a legitimate war for the defense of our nation because of human nature. If a burglar breaks into your home, do you need a deputy's badge before you defend your family? Do you? Anyone? If somebody breaks in your house, you need a badge to defend your house? That's right. Hell no. Okay? The defense of this nation will never require that citizens be drafted. Human nature motivates us to defend ourselves. On page 1 of your Constitution, you see the words in the preamble, "Secure the blessings of liberty." The founders wanted to form not just any government, but one that left intact a feature called liberty. What was meant by the word liberty? Anyone? Volunteers. What's liberty? Freedom. That's right. The dictionary says freedom from unjust or undue governmental control. In other words, liberty is the absence of big government. The Constitution has design features to achieve an objective, to stop the cancerous growth of big government by giving only limited power to politicians. That's how the founders meant to secure the blessings of liberty for their posterity, for us. Now, does anybody have a car? Raise your hand. Anybody got a car? Yeah! All right. Compare the government to a car. If you stab the tires or you cut the spark plug wires, then the car cannot perform its mission. You're going to be walking, right? Right. Similarly, if you damage vital features of the Constitution, you will see your government grow with no limits. No limits. Now, let's look a little deeper at the features intended to limit the power of politicians. Article 1 talks about Congress. On page 1, section 1, all legislative powers shall be vested in a Congress. What does that mean? All legislative powers are vested in a Congress. That means the President is not authorized to issue executive orders that have the force of law. That's what that means. It means the Supreme Court is not authorized to legislate from the bench. When they do so, they are violating their oath of office. They're violating their oath. They are in breach of a verbal contract. They are breaking the supreme law of the land. Bad. Bad politician. Bad politician. On page 6, still in Article 1, Section 8, we find the famous enumerated powers section. That's a listing of approved powers. If you're at the office and the boss says, here's what you can do, that's a list of what you can do, right? The citizens give the government that list. If the Constitution's a blueprint for a car, then Section 8 is its engine. Only Congress can make the federal laws, and their power to make laws is limited in those areas listed. There is nothing in Article 1 that authorizes the federal government to pursue a war on drugs. There's nothing there. Read it for yourself. You got a copy.
Yes.
Now, think about interpretation and the legal idea of judicial review. In the year 1803, what year is this, 2005? 1803, the Supreme Court ruled, and they said that it's emphatically the duty of the judicial department to say what the law is.
I got the one law.
Okay, that's good when it's used to strike down the acts of Congress that violate the Constitution. But this ruling is being abused to redefine the meaning of words and therefore violate original intent. On methods of interpretation, there's two categories. Fixed view and the living tree. Fixed view and the living tree. The fixed view will not work if you don't have an idea called entrenchment. Okay? Entrenchment. Those whose powers are constitutionally limited must not be legally entitled to change those limits at their pleasure. We tell the politicians what to do. They work for us. without entrenchment, no Constitution could be effective. Now, let's do point-counterpoint. There's living tree and fixed view. I'm a fixed view person. Advocates for the living tree charge that different founders meant different things by what was written and signed. To that, the fixed view counters, we have to take the words as written as evidence of the final consensus. If you sign a contract, you write what you say and mean what you say, right? Thank you. The living tree says the court should not be limited by the dead hand of the past. Bad politician. Bad politician. The fixed view counters, the court's opinion, the opinion of the Supreme Court does not amend the Constitution until they follow the requirements of Article 5. If you look on page 15, you can read Article 5, spelling out a required procedure for making changes. Now, before the year 1930, let's talk about the war on drugs, right? Before the year 1930, Americans in the Supreme Court followed the fixed view, okay? We obeyed the law or we changed it. Alas, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Y'all remember Prohibition? In the year 1919, righteous people began to hijack the power of government, using it as a tool to impose their own lifestyle preferences.
Prove that!
And when they started prohibition of alcohol in 1919, they had to pass the 18th Amendment. Okay? Now, today's war on drugs is similar to prohibition, but it is proceeding with no such amendment. What happened? Do y'all see that?
No.
For prohibition, they need an amendment. Why don't they need an amendment now?
Why?
Okay? Prohibition was repealed in 1933, 14 years after it started. Clearly, those righteous people in Congress got caught with their hands in the cookie jar.
Woo!
Bad politicians.
Bad politicians!
How embarrassing. They don't like being embarrassed. Between losing face and Franklin Roosevelt's zeal to pass the New Deal, federal politicians abandoned the rule of law. Can you trust a politician when he doesn't obey the law? The living tree blossomed in the 1930s. Its advocates say the Constitution is not only the document you're holding. Instead, they literally claim an unwritten Constitution can be used to add new enumerated powers. You got a list of what you can do, right? Politicians abandon entrenchment and they abandon the rule of law. Based on that, personal opinions written by a Supreme Court justice has the effect of passing an amendment, unlawfully bypassing Article 5. Bad Supreme Court justice.
Bad!
You're breaking the law. Bad politicians. Why obey the law when your hunting buddy on the Supreme Court can write an opinion for you, adding just another branch to the living tree? Bad politicians. What's next? Amendments based on public opinion polls? Well, guess what? You've got that already. You've got amendments based on public opinion polls. We citizens own the government. We must reverse this perversion of the Constitution if it's ever to again be effective in the preservation of liberty. Bad politicians. Here's my position on the war on drugs briefly. The federal war on drugs is clearly not authorized by Article 1, Section 8 and should be abolished immediately. Bad. According to the 10th Amendment, citizens of Texas could authorize a state program against drugs now. However, if Texas in doing so violates the rights of citizens, then the 14th Amendment gives the federal government the authority to prevent the state of Texas from violating your rights. Okay? So for instance, Nevada may totally legalize drugs while Utah pursues some type of local war on drugs. What's good for citizens of Nevada may not be okay for citizens of Utah, and that's called federalism. Briefly, drug usage should be immediately decriminalized as a state program so the rights and dignity of all citizens are respected. Prior convictions of nonviolent drug crimes should be reversed, and full pardons granted with an apology.
Bad politicians!
Bad politicians. My personal hope is that, like the legendary Phoenix, Jefferson's spirit of '76 will arise from the ashes. Today, we're the first generation in the 21st century. We could restore liberty in remembrance of those ancient patriots like Patrick Henry, Jefferson, and George Washington. Or we could do it for ourselves, our children, and for many generations to come. Let this be the generation who chops down not a cherry tree, not the living tree, but a vicious, vicious weed. An unlawful method of constitutional interpretation. Thank y'all very much, and may liberty survive in these United States.
All right, my friends, thank you. Let's give it up one more time, Guy McLendon. He's obviously